Chapter 25 Unexpected Kindness. On Shemachludi night, a dark figure snuck through the dungeon. He was wearing a black cloak, his hair pulled back and his hood on. A black scarf covered the bottom of his face. Finding Lanczú's cell, he unlocked the boy's cell in chains, then picked him up, trying to cover him as much as he could with his cloak. Lanczú awoke in the morning, but it took him a while to figure out who was carrying him. At first, he thought it was Elinsco, since he thought it was a man carrying him. He was pretty sure that he had not lost so much weight in prison that a little girl could carry him, and could see blonde hair and blue eyes. But Elinsco was too small to carry him this quickly, and this person had 2 hands. His rescuer cleared away some of the snow and put him down on a rock before crouching. He gathered some snow in his gloved hands to try to wash Lanczú's face, but the boy had finally figured out who he was. Lanczú yelped, trying to get to his feet, but instead falling to the ground. He struggled back to sit on the rock, staring with wide eyes, or eye, since he could only open one, while the other boy took off his hood, loosened his hair, and pulled down his scarf, revealing his smirk. "Zebbocron? That really you?" Lanczú asked. "Wah!" His words slurred a little. He had stopped trusting what his eyes told him several days before, when he had thought he had seen Elinsco and Thefia. The thought that the boy who had spent the better part of 2 years tormenting him would now save him was unthinkable. Zebbocron raised an eyebrow. "Really, I am not heartless, you know." He had found himself feeling sorry for the other boy after seeing what Jarissa was doing to him before he was thrown in the dungeon. But it was when he had seen what she had done to Jarissa that he had resolved to free Lanczú. Since she had told him her real name, he had guessed at her identity, and that she would not be killed but ransomed back to the Soledo. He did not think Lanczú was a very important prisoner, nor did he think there was anyone who would rescue him or anything he could be traded for, except perhaps the prince and princess, something he could not let happen. Lanczú laughed. "The past 2 years of my life disagree." A cold wind blew, and Lanczú shivered violently. He hated the idea of asking for anything from Zebbocron, but he was the only one around, and Jarisse was only days away. He was dressed in winter clothes, but he would still freeze without a cloak and hat, and a hat would help him cover his inconveniently bright hair, which, while dirty, was still distinctive. Also, it would look very strange not to. He sighed. "You got another cloak," he muttered, "and a hat and gloves. You bring my stuff?" Zebbocron sighed but reached into his bag and pulled out a cloak. It was fine, but not as nice as what Zebbocron was wearing, and black and gold, lined with feathers. He handed it to Lanczú, then pulled out a woolen hat and pair of mittens. They were plain black. "Do you have? My cloak does not match anything about you, least of all your voice, but it should suffice. Do not ruin it. I know that may be difficult for you, but it should not be impossible." He looked down at his clothes, which had gotten dirty from spending a night carrying a boy that had not bathed in 3 weeks, and spent most of the last 2 in the dungeon, and made a face. "Then again, maybe it is. And no, I did not bring your things. I do not know what they did with the belongings of you loyalists." Lanczú winced at the comment on his accent, but took them and put them on. They helped a little. The cloak would be too long for him, though, being made for a boy almost half a foot taller than him. He felt like he might cry at the mention of his things. He had them there because they were important to him. Now he would probably never get them back. "Now, I may not like you very much, but that man is far worse," Zebbocron said. Lanczú crossed his arms. "'Cause he's a Jarissa?" he asked, though he did not entirely know whether that was supposed to be rhetorical or not. Zebbocron laughed, and Lanczú glared at him. "Is that really what you think of me? Perhaps I have been giving you too much credit," he said. Anger boiled within Lanczú. He knew he should not be bothered by these comments anymore, but he was. He could almost hear Thefia chiding him in that way she had that reminded him so much of his mother. His fingers started to form a fist, but he stopped and hissed when they pressed against the cut there. Zebbocron put up a hand. "Stop." Lanczú did, but he kept glaring at him and crossed his arms. "Look, you Bavarians may be simple, but you are harmless. Heretical, yes, but at least not when it comes to the Trinity. That man, however, is evil and a modalist. No matter how you you are, or how ridiculous you sound. You do not deserve to be his prisoner. Now, if you are quite done, I have business with my family." Lanczú was making a valiant effort not to punch him. It appeared Zebbocron had standards, at least, but his comments about Beraden still made Lanczú's blood boil. "Simple," he said, almost growling. "No, we ain't. Lynx served the kingdom. Elinsco was one of the most powerful people in it, and Mamon's still one of the most powerful merchants in the country." Zebbocron blinked, staring at him in surprise. "Mignon Lincière is your grandfather?" He was so surprised that he did not even correct Elinsco or Mon. Lanczú blinked, realizing he had called Elinsco his grandfather in front of the last person he wanted to know. Part of the reason he had come all the way out to Soledo was because no one knew who he was there. As much as he hated being seen as a stupid Beraden peasant, at least it was different from everyone looking at him and only seeing his grandfather. "Yes." Zebbocron sighed. "That explains a lot." Lanczú glared at him. "I could say the same to you." Zebbocron stiffened. "At least Maman don't kiss his maids," Lanczú continued. Zebbocron's fists clenched. "It ain't no Zebbocron's expression twisted into rage. Before the younger boy could finish that rather vulgar word, he seized Lanczú's collar and stood, lifting him off the ground. His eyes were narrowed, blazing with fury, unlike Lanczú's only inches away, which was as wide as the moon's. He almost opened his left eye, but that hurt. "Do not ever say that about me, and never call me that," Zebbocron said, his voice low but angry. "I will have you know I did everything I could to stop him." Considering he had been 14, the same height as Elinsco, and as thin as Prince Gero at the time of the scandal, that was not much. "I even freed the tyrants the Queen caught later," he continued. "I am nothing like that man. Do you understand?" Shaken, Lanczú nodded. Zebbocron dropped him. Lanczú tried to land on his feet, but slipped on the snow. He was skeptical about what Zebbocron claimed. Lanczú did not think he was as bad as his father, but he also doubted he would treat his servants legally. He thought that perhaps using that rather vulgar word had been going too far, considering how Duke Gardezel was rumored to treat his wife. Lanczú sat back on the rock. "Also," Zebbocron added, calmer now, "your Monyo has no maids. Now, are you finished? I have business to attend to." "I don't know. Are you, milord?" Lanczú said. He never called him that unless he wanted to annoy him. He also used the formal you, which was also used in similar situations. Zebbocron sighed. "Are you my lord? But I am glad you finally learned how to use the formal you." Lanczú smiled. "You don't need to call me my lord, Zebbocron," he said in a terrible nobleman's accent. He sounded more like a Sanaran. Zebbocron rolled his eyes. "I do not sound like that, and you know what I meant. If you will insult me, at least do it properly. And please, my name is Josebo. Lord Josebo Evadelio Linsio Bachezo Elijo Akinso. Did your Monson not teach you your manners?" Lanczú kept smiling, though he had barely stopped himself from rolling his eyes halfway through Zebbocron's list of names. "I could ask you the same question." Zebbocron sighed. "So where are you going?" Lanczú frowned, trying to think. "I gotta find my friends. Think they might have gone to wherever Linsco's priest brother is. Linsco, though I would, of course, prefer it if you called him Elinsco." Lanczú gave him a look, then frowned again. "Can't think of where he is. Somewhere by Sillery." "Who is he? Is he a true priest or one of those heretics?" Lanczú rolled his eyes. "He's Quinian, right?" He thought for a moment. "Father Jean-Val Josebo, Sillery, son of Garinchon, grandson of Quinia. Saint Evardello in Soravigno, a little north of Sillery, I believe. An hour or so by horse. From Sillery, of course, not here," Zebbocron said. While his father had tried to make him memorize which priests were where in the diocese, he only knew of Father Chanfal because he had come to his family to ask for payment for his education. Duke Aradezel had refused due to his status. Duchess Jacintelia had almost done the same because he was accompanied by Ferrand and the grandson of a Beraden, but had decided to ask her family to pay for it because Duke Aradezel had refused. I must go to Miravine and Zebbocron ground. Great. Those are in the same direction. Lanczú sighed. Right. It was a historic moment. Lanczú and Zebbocron agreeing on something. Let us go quickly so we may end this as soon as we can, Zebbocron said. Who shall I say that we are? I can hardly say that I am the son of Duke Aradezel, travelling with the grandson of Mignoness Lissière, who, for some reason, was so important to Garintho that he was kept less than a metre away. Lanczú flinched at the sound of Garintho's name, and found out what he had been called. Zebbocron did not particularly like what he had called himself either. Acknowledging his relationship with his father always felt like eating ashes, and it was a struggle to keep a grimace from his face. Lanczú thought, something that had gotten very difficult. He had not been sleeping well for 3 weeks, or really slept at all for one of those, but he knew that was not all of it. Brothers, he suggested. He had seen enough to know brothers did not always get along. Of course, they also did not usually have wildly different accents. There was a plausible explanation for it, but that would give their father, or mother, a character that was far too similar to Duke Aradezel. Zebbocron looked suspicious enough without that detail. Zebbocron laughed. Brothers, we look and sound nothing alike, and I have heard your attempts to sound of Zinin. If I were like you and had no self-control, Elvira would not be the only reason for your state. They had the same color eyes, and Encheux's hair was blonde, though not as light as Zebbocron's. But their clothes were wildly different styles. Zebbocron's fine and Ozinin style, and Lanczú's Cineran style, and clearly something for a formal occasion such as La Carrière. Should one look past all the dirt accumulated from 3 weeks of not taking a bath, 2 of which were spent in a dungeon. There was, of course, a somewhat plausible explanation for how a Beraden peasant and an Ozinin noble could be brothers. One Zebbocron knew would be a bad idea to use. He did not want to be disappointed in his fake father as well as his real one. Lanczú flinched. And I am not imitating whatever language you are speaking, Zebbocron continued. Lanczú glared at him. Which is Quinian? How about cousins? Zebbocron still looked amused. My cousin! A Borgno! Lanczú was struggling not to make a fist. Call me that again, he growled. Well, considering you are a Beraden, we could be both brothers and cousins, Zebbocron continued, ignoring him. Lanczú rolled his eyes. And considering you're a noble, I can say the same to you. You could be my servant, Zebbocron said, still ignoring him. Lanczú stiffened and glared at him. No. He barely knew how to act. Besides, it had similar problems to them saying they were brothers. Duke Aradezel had almost been imprisoned for abusing his servants. Zebbocron, a large blond boy with an Ozinin noble's accent, dressed mostly in black, traveling around with a beaten-up sick boy he claimed was his servant, would connect him to that. It could also get him thrown in prison, which, while certainly a tempting idea to Lanczú, would also be very inconvenient and attract unnecessary attention, not to mention risk someone recognizing them. Duke Aradezel could buy Zebbocron's way out of prison and pay everyone to keep them quiet, but Lanczú did not want to risk the rumors of how he treated his sons being true. Besides, they would have to explain why they were dropping Lanczú off at Soravigno, while Zebbocron continued to Miravine. Zebbocron knew all of this, and had mostly suggested it to mess with him. Lanczú was not thinking clearly enough to realize that. Zebbocron smiled and thought for a moment. How about I was leaving and found you, and, well, look at yourself. I could not leave you like that, could I? We do not get along, but it only makes sense to travel together. Lanczú sighed. It was better than the other ideas. He paused, then sighed. What day is it? He muttered. The 3rd Shemachludi of Duomi, 908 years after the estimated birth of Sharatne Lochragneso. Zebbocron said, annoyed. Lanczú rolled his eyes. I asked the day, not the year. He looked up. So if you think the Jarissa King so bad, why'd you help him? He asked. That was survival. Two fates await you loyalists, capture and death, Zebbocron said. Unlike you, I have a sense of self-preservation. And for goodness sake, just call him Garento. Lanczú flinched at the name. So you betrayed your country? He shot back. Zebbocron bristled. I did not! I fought with him to survive, and since then have been helping in any way I can. I let that exigence hands down, and you know how much it took to rescue you. A lot. I had to get an excuse to leave, and then spend an inordinate amount of time trying to make myself look like the opposite of someone who would rescue you. Perhaps I should ask why you were kept in the throne room. What he had called Jarissa was a rude word for a spy, especially a Soledo spy. Lanczú was not sure he wanted to know what Zebbocron had done to make himself look like the last person who would free Lanczú. He could remember some somewhat rude comments Zebbocron had made when he brought him his dinner. Lanczú stopped. He did not have the energy to explain that. That's a long answer. We have time. Lanczú sighed. Elinsco tried to fight the Jarissa King, so Thefasija and I went back to make sure he was all right. He weren't, so Thefasija got him out while I held off the Jarissa King. Then that awful woman Ethicika caught me. He looked down at his hands. What happened to him? Zebbocron asked calmly. Lanczú stared at his left hand. His left hand. The Jarissa King cut it off. If we hadn't shown up when we did. He looked away. Zebbocron frowned, uncomfortable, but trying not to show it. At least he will fight properly now. You're just mad he beat you, 'cause you're bad at defending that side, Lanczú said. Zebbocron shot him a glare, but otherwise did not acknowledge the comment. Anyway, you have not only not answered my question, but also raised new ones. Honestly, you always berate me for saying that you Bavarians are simple-minded, yet when I ask you simple questions, you always answer with these non-sequiturs. What am I supposed to think? So why did Elinsco think it was a good idea to fight Garento? Why did you and that social starter— oh, wait, never mind, I already know that one. And the actual original question. What is so special about some Borneo? You call me that again, Lanczú growled. Answer the question, Zebbocron said calmly. Say my name, Lanczú demanded. Zebbocron blinked. What? You're always whining that we don't call you by the right name, but I haven't never heard you say mine. So say it. Lanczú was having trouble not slipping into dialect. Zebbocron rolled his eyes. Then why do you want me to say it? Lanczú glared at him. You know what I meant. Zebbocron sighed. Fine. Answer the question, Elinsco. What is so special about Sam Baraden? The sound of Zebbocron saying his name sounded almost as good to Lanczú as he imagined Menzisnio saying he was proud of him would sound. Thank you, Lanczú said, a little calmer. Now the rest of it, and what everyone else calls me. I will not give that mutilation of your name any legitimacy. Anyway, answer the question. Lanczú sighed. Well, it's 'cause of Elinsco. Zebbocron rolled his eyes. That does not help. What is so special about some Ozinin farmer? Lanczú smiled, realizing the answer. That Ozinin farmer also happens to be the Jarisse. It felt good to say that. Finally, something for him to hold over Zebbocron. For once, Zebbocron seemed speechless. What? But he cannot— he's just an Ozinin farmer! He uses the wrong hand. He can barely speak, and when he does, it is wrong. He can barely read his own name. He has that childish obsession with breaking glass and pottery. He is barely the size of a boy. You might as well have told me that it is that girl from Saravine. Or you. What is wrong with Sio? Lanczú almost laughed. Since when did Sio do things that made sense? Instead, he looked at the other boy flatly. You do know that all of those are shared by at least one of the other Areski, right? Lisnis Bombir was a Baraden farmer. They were all small and broke glass and pottery, and your precious ancestor was left-handed too, and even shorter than Niscosijo is. Lisnis Bombir used his left hand a lot too, and almost none of them could read. And Niscosijo's 17. He is a boy. Of course, Lanczú was also 17, for a few more days, and almost a foot taller. Zebbocron was still stammering. But I... He shook his head. Never mind. I suppose that answers the questions. He ran a hand through his hair, then sighed. How do you feel? Lanczú looked up. Really? He was smiling a little, but his tone was flat. Wanted a nap. I think that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Just tell me. Lanczú thought about it. Cold. It's helping me think a little, at least. Everything hurts. He was very tired, and really all he wanted was to be with his mother. Well, I suppose it could be worse, Zebbocron said. He looked at Lanczú. So if you do not feel as bad, will you start at least trying to sound like someone from this country? Lanczú groaned and lay back in the snow. Please don't. Zebbocron sensed he was getting close to his standards, which, shockingly, existed. Then he realized his cloak could get muddy. Sit up! Are you trying to ruin my cloak? Lanczú shut his eyes tighter. He was worried he might cry. Sensing he was edging close to his standards again, Zebbocron sighed. All right, I suppose I can wash it later, he said, his voice gentle. You should sit up, though. You will get wet, and I do not want you freezing to death. Lanczú knew he was right. He sighed and sat up, but did not look up. Zebbocron paused, then spoke again. By the way, he said. Lanczú looked up. When you kill a Thera, I want to be there. Zebbocron continued. Lanczú raised his remaining eyebrow. Let me guess, 'cause she's a poor Soledo. Zebbocron glared at him. Is that all you think of me? I have other reasons for disliking people, you know. Then why? Zebbocron's expression darkened. Anya Lisa. Oh, Iveria, I should say. I believe she was a spy for Lady Quinia. Ethira. His fists clenched and he was struggling not to scream. Cut off, ha ha, he ground out. Jarissa had told him her real name, or at least her nickname, when he let her hands down. She may be an Azijin, but even an Azijin deserves better than that. Lanczú was too tired to yell, but his jaw clenched and he shot Zebbocron a glare. Zebbocron looked at him. And if you try to say something about my parents, I will bring you back to Soledo. Lanczú rolled his eyes. Zebbocron looked at Lanczú. You really should clean yourself up. You do not look well. Lanczú looked at him flatly. He did not feel like dealing with this normally, let alone when he was sick and injured. You don't say. That is actually what I was trying to do before you so rudely interrupted. I thought you would look suspicious with your face so dirty, and that I should try to do something for your injuries, he said. Right, Lanczú said. They washed his face, hands, and feet with snow, having to use a little fire magic to melt it. Luckily, Zebbocron had flint. By the end, Lanczú was shivering a lot. We need to get you inside, Zebbocron said. Misavigno and Carfigno are not far, actually. Perhaps we could go there. Lanczú looked up. He was trying to dry his hands, which were starting to feel like blocks of ice. We are. You think they'd recognize us? Do you? And perhaps Mira Zebbocron and the friars, if they are there, certainly could. Possibly Via Farelia and the children of both couples as well. The rest did not see us much. We are dressed quite differently, and you are no longer making any attempt to sound like someone from this country, Zebbocron said. Lanczú winced. We could try, and I highly doubt anyone from a town like that even really knows what is happening, he continued. He stopped. Wait, when was the last time you walked? Lanczú frowned. Depends. What counts as walking? Zebbocron sighed. Wonderful. Let us just go. They began walking. It was slow, Lanczú stumbling and wincing at every step, but they made it to Misavigno. Zebbocron had to help Lanczú stand and walk, neither of which was liked by either boy, but both of which they accepted. Lanczú was surprised he was even able to stay on his feet. He was more tired by then, and while he had walked for a little after he had been thrown in the dungeon, eventually it had become more like crawling. As it turned out, the friars were in Misavigno. One of them, named Brother Careshal, noticed them and how sick Lanczú was. "My goodness, is that boy all right?" he asked. Like most of the friars, he had a middle-class Cenaran accent. Zebbocron stopped, cursing his luck. As much as they needed help, he did not want to draw any attention or risk being recognized. "He's injured. Looks quite bad. Is he sick?" "Sure looks like he is." Brother Careshal looked up. "Come with me. We can help him." "Oh, no, that is quite all right," Zebbocron said, his tone a little strained. This was the last situation he wanted to be in. "The boy's half dead. He needs help, and he needs it as soon as possible," Brother Careshal said. "That is what we were on our way to do," Zebbocron said. Brother Careshal looked up. "Where?" Zebbocron stopped, both working up the nerve to lie to a friar and trying to think of a good one. Finally, he gave up and told the truth. "Town by Celery," he muttered. "Celery? That's days away, and knows how bad it'll be by then." Brother Careshal sighed. "I'm sorry, but this can't wait. At least let us clean him up." Zebbocron stopped, then sighed. If there was one argument one would always lose, it was whether one should let a derelier and help him. Lanczú was smiling. Though he was worried about them telling someone who he was, it had been a while since someone had been kind to him. At least, without adding pointed comments about his upbringing. "Fine. Clean him and give him some clean clothes, but I want to be in Miravine by Jarisse, so do not take too long," Zebbocron said. Brother Careshal nodded, smiling. "Thank you." So he cleaned up Lanczú and managed to find some clean clothes for him and some food that was at least better than the watery broth and stale bread he had eaten in the dungeon. "Do you two need someone to take you where you need to go?" Brother Careshal asked. Lanczú nodded. "Your friend?" Lanczú almost laughed when the friar called Zebbocron his friend. "Said you were going to a town by Celery. Which one?" Brother Careshal asked. "There's this priest by Celery who says he's like a doctor," Lanczú said. Brother Careshal nodded. "Corino's grandson? The Elinsco and Duchessa Jacintelia paid for him to go to seminary?" Elinsco was the house Duchessa Jacintelia had been born into. Lanczú nodded. "Well, it's a small town, but I'm sure I can find someone. You just stay here." Lanczú smiled. "Thank you." Brother Careshal shrugged. "I'm a derelier. We help people." He paused and leaned in. "You're the soldier, aren't you?" he whispered. "The one who was asking about Kara a few months back?" Lanczú froze, then finally nodded. "I am." He nodded. "Thought so." He looked at the boy. "Don't worry. I'm sure Brother Ishranvon has a whole thing about how if someone comes around asking about you, lying and saying that we didn't see you was the most moral option." Indeed he did. While lying is an immoral action, both telling the truth and saying nothing would also be immoral actions due to the consequences of putting Lanczú in danger and putting the friars in danger. And probably Lanczú as well, since refusing to answer made it sound like they knew something and just did not want to say it, respectively. Lying, if done convincingly, would not put anyone in danger and would have a good intention, though still an immoral object. Telling the truth and saying nothing were moral objects with moral intentions but negative consequences in difficult circumstances. Lying would have an immoral object, positive consequences, difficult circumstances, and a positive intention. It would at least be lying with lessened culpability. Lanczú smiled. "Thank you." He shrugged again. "Like I said, we can argue it's the most moral option." He stood and left. He found Zebbocron, who was pacing from impatience that the friar mistook for concern, and asked him to come with him to find someone to take them to Soravigno. They did find someone and went back to where Lanczú was. Brother Careshal told him a few things he could do to help, and then helped Lanczú walk to the man's cart. Brother Careshal said goodbye to them, and Lanczú managed to mumble some response. The moment Lanczú was in the cart, he wrapped Zebbocron's cloak around himself and fell asleep almost immediately. It felt good to finally sleep, wrapped in a cloak in a wooden cart, instead of in chains on the cold, dank floor of his cell, or the hard cot when he had the strength to drag himself onto it, or in chains on the floor by the throne, which somehow managed to be more uncomfortable than his cell. He dreamed, too. about Elinsco and Thefia with Father Jeanfin, though after that they turned confusing, nonsensical, and scary. The night the king and queen died, two people shared one dream. A little girl with blonde hair brought her knees to her chest and cried. It was the cry of a girl alone, who had gotten lost and did not know where her parents were. Someone else's cries reached her ears, and she looked up. She looked around and found a boy sitting behind her, a boy a few years younger than her, maybe 5 or 6, with short red hair. His short hair left his neck visible, and she could see a thick band of metal fastened around it. She walked over to him and sat next to him. "What is wrong?" The boy jumped, scrambling away from her and shaking his head. He looked scared. His face was bruised. She could see his eyes now. They were gold, like her hair. She could see his clothes, too. He was not wearing a shirt and pants like a Quinian boy would, but rather a plain robe, undyed, unornamented, and without any sort of cloak or mantle. It was too cloaked to be a monk or friar's habit, and anyway the wrong style. No, it was a foreign style. Northern. The girl tilted her head when she saw the bruise, confused. "Did you fall down?" The boy just kept shaking his head, staring at her and looking terrified.